Stephanie with another creative art idea for you to pursue. I hope everybody is staying safe and staying healthy in these strange times. And I'm going to lead you through a project today. The first thing I'm going to do is kind of give you a sense of what we will be using. Have you ever heard of the term mixed media? Well, what mixed media means is we'll be using more than one art material, say colored pencils, markers. Today, you'll need some heavy paper. We're going to be painting on the paper. You're going to need some watercolor paints. Now, it can be any kind of watercolor paint. The little trays that you get from Crayola watercolors, that's great. So watercolor paints and a couple of brushes. If you have some markers, gather your markers, any kind of markers, and colored pencils. So we're going to be mixing these materials together to make a fun and colorful picture. So gather your materials. Make sure you've got a thick piece of paper. If you have a couple pieces of scrap paper, that would be a good idea too, because I'm going to show you how to do some things, and we can do a little bit of practice first. So gather your stuff, and I will be right here, and we'll come right back and we'll start the project. Okay, so I hope you have most of your materials gathered. You will also need a pencil, and I can't believe I forgot to mention that, but you'll also need a pencil. Any kind of regular number 2 pencil that you use in school is fine. So the first thing we're going to be doing is there is a little bit of drawing in this activity today. We're going to be doing a very fanciful bird, but you don't have to know how to draw a real bird. We are just going to start in your paper, lay your paper out, and in the middle of your paper, not too large, you're going to take that pencil and you're going to sketch what looks like a kidney bean. Light. You can see how I've done it, not too dark, in the middle of the paper. So this is going to be our fanciful bird's body. Like I said, we're not worried about real bird anatomy. Then you're going to take your pencil again, put it down on the paper, and we are going to draw what looks like a fat flower petal with a pointed part sticking out. And we're going to add that right on top of our kidney bean shape. And that is going to be the start of our bird wing. So then I'm going to make a little triangle here at one end of the bean. It's your choice which end. That's going to be the beak. And then on the other side, behind and below where we drew a rough wing, I'm just going to draw a few large, elongated kind of ovals with curved ends that look like flower petals. So think about a flower, and I drew about 4 of those. So that's going to be the start of our bird's tail. Now, looking at our bird, well, our bird needs to walk. So I'm going to add 2 little sticks here. And then for each toe, notice that I'm doing this in sections. So I'm drawing each piece as a little shape. In this case, each foot is going to have 3 front toes and 1 little back toe. So from a kidney bean in the middle, a fat rounded petal with a point for the wing, a small triangle for the beak, 4 elongated pieces here, and his legs done in sections. So we have our bird basically drawn. Oh, and let's give him an eye. So I'm just going to draw an eye in here. So go ahead and do your drawing and get your drawing the way you like it. If you want to work out some ideas, draw some basic shapes on a piece of scrap paper to begin with, go right ahead. And then I'll be back to show you the next step of the process. Well, I hope your bird drawing is coming along well. Remember, it's not about bird anatomy. It's about using those individual shapes, having fun, and drawing something creative. So for the next step, we're going to be using watercolor paint. I have a nice little set of watercolors here. You can see they're well used. I've used them actually for many years. And I've got a couple different kinds of brushes. I'm going to start by using a fat brush, but it all depends on what kind of brush you have. You'll see in a minute. You can just take your time and use any kind of brush. So what we're going to be doing is painting the different sections of this bird. This is where you can really have fun with this project because you can paint them any color you would like. So what I am going to do here, I've prepared a few colors. I'm going to start by, I thought about it and I thought, well, I want the bird's wing, this bottom part of the wing, to be yellow. So I'm going to paint that yellow. And then while that's drying, I have some orange mixed here. And I thought, well, you know, I'm going to do these feathers, the base of these, kind of with an orangish color. And remember, you can pick any color you would like for this. So I'm just doing these individual strokes, and I'm kind of suggesting some feathers. Now, our bird needs a body color, and maybe what I'll do with this body color today is I'm going to do a light green. You do not have to do a light green. Again, any color you want. And I'm just going to start doing part of his head here, green. And I'm going to let that go like that. So then I'm going to put that big fat brush aside. And I've got a thinner brush here. And what I'm going to do with this brush, so I've started adding some color to my bird. Now I'm going to take a green, slightly greener color here. And I'm going to add some feathers above his legs. And I'm going to add some colors back here. Now you can see I am just making this up as I go along. I'm just having fun picking out colors. It's not about what makes this bird look like a specific type of bird. It's just laying out some colors and having fun. So now I'm going to start on the back of the wing, and I'm going to make a couple of feathers. And this is a good thing to practice. If you have a piece of scrap paper, maybe you could practice first. If you want to make some, brush strokes to say, well, that's what a feather looks like. You can make some larger feathers. Kind of think of flower petals with a point. So if you feel more confident to do a couple of practice rounds first, here's a feather in red. Do some practice rounds first. So the paint doesn't have to be very thick. You can see that I have a relatively thin layer there. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint some feathers on the back of my bird here. And you can see that I am adding some feathers here. Not necessarily completely following my pencil lines, but they're my guide. So if you want to do your bird's tail, for example, exactly the way you drew it, you can. If you want to change it up a little bit, you can. But I'm doing a series of individual feathers in the back here. Let's pick one more color here for his tail. So I'm going to look at that and say, well, I'm going to add a few feathers in here. So you can basically take your brush or brushes, if you have more than one, that's great. And starting with your drawing, add some basic swipes of paint, some large brush strokes in areas to suggest those feathers. So you don't have to fill in all the spaces. It doesn't have to be very dark. Remember, we're going to have more steps to this. So now at this point you can see I've got a beak and the legs. So I'm going to do my beak in yellow, and all I'm going to do with that right now is just paint that whole triangle yellow. And for the legs are another good thing if you want to practice. It's a brush stroke down. And here. So you can see that each part of that leg, and then I'll show you on here, is a single brush stroke. So certainly take your time. There's no hurry. And lay down each brush stroke on there. You know, and practice. If you're not sure how to do it, take that piece of paper, one stroke down, 3 strokes for the front toes that are about half the length of this one, and then a little one for the back. So go ahead and paint your bird any colors. You want bright, bold colors, pastel colors, anything is good for that. Paint your bird, and we'll be back with the next part of this project. Welcome back. You can see that one of my faithful cat assistants is watching over me carefully as I do this project. Luckily for me, she has not stepped into paint water or entered the drawing area proper. So, you painted your bird. I hope you had fun with the colors, chose a lot of different colors. Remember, here's my painted bird. When you're finished with the painting, this is the part where you have to take a break, set it aside, let it dry completely. For us to do the next part of the process, which is a lot of fun, that paint needs to be completely dry. So if you're looking for a project and you have something else to do for a while, do that first part of the project, draw your bird, do the painting, set it aside and come back later. Now, through the magical mystery of I made another example, here is a bird that is painted and dry. So what I'm going to show you now is what we're going to do to decorate this bird. So we've painted our creature, but now we're going to have fun just adding details with any kind of colorful markers you have and any kind of colored pencils. You could also use ballpoint pens for this. You could use ink pens. I'm going to show you a couple strategies for how to use these materials to decorate the bird, and then I will start working on mine. So, and if you made a couple of example feathers to try it out, what I'm going to do first is show you some ideas for how to decorate feathers on this ruff. So, maybe the first one, I'm thinking, well, you know, I'd like to start. So think of feathers. You have a piece down the middle, so I'm going to take this marker and I'm going to start decorating a feather. Maybe I'll do that on this one as well. Maybe on this one, I want to use a different color or have a thinner one. So you can see how I'm starting these by drawing a line right down the middle. Then, and remember, this is an activity that we're actually going to be doing on our bird, but I'm just showing you here some ideas for doing it. So then I'm going to take a colored pencil, a color that's going to stand out against my painted background, and I'm just going to do my lines. So I've got this feather that's green and blue with a green middle. Maybe I'm going to do another one. I've got some green here. So you can see this one. This might not be a combination I'd want to do because that color doesn't show up very well. So there's one there. We'll probably add something to that. And then I think, well, what about a nice dark green against this one? So then I'm going to add one here. And maybe for this one, I want this feather to have kind of two different colors. So maybe on the other side, I'm going to do a dark blue. So then maybe this one, maybe outline it a little bit. So see what I'm doing? I am taking the basic shapes that are laid down with the paint. Once the paint is completely dry, I can work over them with pencils and with the markers. So here's my bird here. I'm going to take a green, and maybe I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to outline him. Give him some feathers coming around here, feathers here. So I'm having fun mixing colors. This is not a stressful activity. Then I'm going to pick up a different color, and maybe I want to give him some feathers coming down this way. So I'm just going to continue to decorate that. And then I look at it and think, okay, well, here's where I'm going to do some stuff on the tail. So I'm going to take this nice big thick pencil and decorate some of these feathers. Now, in between each of these, you can see on this one, I did all kinds of different painting. So here, let's use our pink marker. I'm actually going to take the pink marker. So this is why I said you can use colored pencils and markers. You can mix and match. In between each one of these, I'm going to trace this one. And just start laying in more detail. And the feathers are really just those kind of flower petal-like shapes. I put a line down the middle, and then I do lines on the side. So that's how I do that kind of feather. So the other thing I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to take a really dark pencil. In this case, in my wing, I've got a dark blue. And you can see how, with that colored pencil, I can just draw right over my watercolor areas as long as they're completely dry. This is why the bird has to be, your paint layer has to be completely dry. So you've got a dry piece of paper to work with for pencils and markers. And I'm just going to take these then, and I'm going to add a lot more detail on my bird. And I'm just having fun with this. There's no right or wrong. I'm not worried about what kind of bird it is. I'm just kind of drawing some feathers in and adding them where I want to. So I've added some in. So for your feet, and I've got this little working study here, but this one is dry, so I can show you on the feet. There are a couple different things you could do. If you want to take a marker, in this case, here's a marker. I can just do some little lines on the feet like this. You know, like you think of big birds' feet. When you think of birds, you can see the dividers in their feet. I can also take, let's use a bright orange here, if I want to do that with a pencil. So see how I'm adding a layer of decoration and detail to this for my feet. So see, I can start with that yellow paint layer and then add more details. So you can mix and match your colors. I think one more important thing I need to do here, I'm going to get this black pencil. I'm going to give him a big friendly eye here. And then maybe we'll add a little more back here for yellow. Maybe some yellow in here, yellow in here. You can add yellow between spaces. So see how I'm just having fun with my materials. I'm looking at the different colors. I'm exploring what I can do with them. Let's use this green. And just kind of laying things in on the bird to be a fun and colorful bird. Remember, the paint needs to be completely dry. After the paint is dry, you can decorate him in any way you want. So here's my example. And this is the type of thing that if I really wanted to get into even more detail, I could continue working on him for a long time. But I think he looks pretty good for now. So have fun, explore your colors, and explore your materials. Start with your drawing, do that layer of watercolor, let the watercolor dry completely, and then play with the colors of markers and colored pencils and whatever materials you have. Enjoy. You can include let the Center for Creative Arts know about what you finish or your project, and send us a picture of it when it's done. So stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll be back soon with another creative art project.